Hey y'all, and welcome back to my channel. If you are new here, I just want to say welcome, and I am so thankful that you decided to stop and watch today's video. Today we are making 3 summer squash side dishes. The first side dish we are making is called squash tots. So it's kind of like tater tots, but it's with squash, of course. And we really enjoyed this, and we just had it on the side of some cheeseburgers. We are going to be starting out tonight's recipe by grating the squash. But the first thing I want to do is I just want to take this cheesecloth and I'm going to lay it over my cutting board where we're going to grate the squash to. Just because after you get done grating it, you're going to want to squeeze out all of the liquid that's going to be still in it. So I just want to go ahead and have it falling onto my cheesecloth instead of having to pick it up and put it in there. But what I have is let's see. I have about 2 medium-sized squash. Woo. I'm a mess. I have 2 of these, and then I have 2 smaller ones, and so that's what I'm going to use for tonight's recipe. But I cut off one end, and I'm just going to take that end and we're just going to grate it just like you would cheese. These squash were actually gifted to us by our neighbor. They have a big, beautiful garden, and they came over the other day and they asked us, they're like, do y'all like squash and zucchini and everything? We're like, oh yeah. And they're like, well, we have way too many, so we want to go ahead and gift y'all some. And so that was really, really sweet of them to do. But this is all I'm going to do is I'm just going to grate all 4 of these squash, and then I will bring you back and show you the next step. Now that I have all of this grated, ooh, look at that. Ooh, that made a lot. Wow, I wasn't expecting it to be that much. Alright, so now what we're going to do is I'm just going to take my cheesecloth and we're just going to wrap it up, and then we're going to take it to the sink and wring it out. Now, if you don't have a cheesecloth to get all this liquid out to squeeze it, you can always use a strainer, kind of like this one, and I think this one would work just as well. But I'm just going to be kind of twisting this cheesecloth and squeezing, and we're going to try and get out as much of this excess liquid as we possibly can. Now I left my squash over there in the sink in that cheesecloth, and I'm just going to let it sit there for a little while and just kind of let it drain on its own without squeezing it. And while I do that, we need to dice up this small onion. Now if you don't have a small onion, I would just use about half of a medium onion, or I mean, I guess really depends on how much you love onion. If you really love onion, you could probably just put a whole medium size one in there. But it also is going to depend on how much squash you use. Like mine made a lot more than what I was anticipating, so I'm just going to start with this small onion, and if when I'm mixing everything up together, if I feel like we could use some more, I can always add more. You know, just because we're going by a recipe doesn't mean you have to do it exactly like it says. You can just make it your own, whatever your family likes. If your family doesn't like onion, don't put in the onion, that's okay. But I'm just going to dice this up, and then I will get my squash back over here. After dicing up the onion, I'm just going to sit this over here to the side. I'm going to bring in a big mixing bowl. We're going to add in our squash. And I also wanted to let y'all know that you can also use zucchini in this recipe instead of squash if you prefer that, or if that's what you have on hand. And then we're going to take our onion. We're going to add that. Gonna do about 1 cup of breadcrumbs. Now the recipe calls for salt, pepper, and garlic powder, and so I'm just gonna use this garlic and pepper seasoning that I like to get. We're going to add in about a cup of cheese. I'm using shredded cheddar cheese. And then it calls for 1 egg. Well, my chickens have finally started laying eggs, but their eggs are so tiny. Look how little. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to use 2 of these small eggs. But if you were using just store-bought eggs, or if your chickens are laying regular size eggs, just use 1. Alright, and then we're just going to mix this all together. And it said that the consistency is going to be kind of sticky. And then it said if it's too wet and not really sticky, you'll want to just add in a few more breadcrumbs. Once you get that all mixed up, you're going to take your baking sheet. I lined mine with parchment paper. If you don't have parchment paper, that is okay. I would just spray some non-stick cooking spray. And now I'm going to take about 1 tablespoon to 1.5 tablespoons of this mixture, and I'm just going to try and form it into like a tot. You can just do like a little ball, that's fine. But I think putting it in a little tot would be cute. It's kind of a big tot, but it'll be alright. And so I'm just going to repeat this process and hopefully not make a huge mess until all of the squash mixture is used up. Now after you get your tots formed, you're just going to want to put them in a 400-degree oven for about 25 minutes or until they start getting golden brown. And there is the finished product. We are just going to serve ours with some cheeseburgers, just like you would a tater tot. And I did want to let y'all know that when you take these out of the oven, you are going to want to let them sit and rest on the counter for just about 5 minutes. That way they're easier to handle. But other than that, these are really good. For the second side dish, we are making a southern squash casserole. And the only thing I would actually change about this is I would add a little bit more salt and pepper than I actually did, just because I feel like it just needs a little bit more flavor. So the first thing I'm going to do for tonight's side dish is I'm going to slice up these squash. And I'm just using about 4 good sized squash. I would say they're between medium and large. This one's probably more like a medium size. This one's probably more like a large size. And then I'm also going to dice up 1 medium onion. And now with these squash, I do want to cut them pretty thin. Let me go ahead and get these ends off. Did you see me knock that? Alright, so I'm going to try and cut these pretty thin, just because I want them to cook evenly. I don't want to have like a big chunky one and it not get done, and then have these little tiny ones and them get real mushy. So I'm just going to go ahead and slice all of these up, and I'm going to try and stay as consistent as I can with the sizes. So I melted about 2 tablespoons of butter here in this skillet. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and add in the onion and squash. And we're just going to cook this in the skillet until they start softening. I was going to use a smaller skillet. It's just falling. I was going to use a smaller skillet, but when I realized how much these 4 squash made, I had to get a bigger one. All right. And now I'm also going to add in about a teaspoon of minced garlic. And I'm just going to kind of get this tossed a little bit just so these onions and squash are all mixed up with that garlic. Get a little bit of butter on them. While you wait for your squash to soften, you do want to go ahead and preheat your oven to 375 degrees. Y'all, our squash is almost done, so I'm going to go ahead and take, I have a bowl here, and I have 3 tablespoons of butter, and I'm going to go ahead and melt that, and then we're going to combine it with some Ritz crackers. So I have my butter melted here in this bowl, and I'm going to take 1 sleeve of Ritz crackers, and I'm just going to kind of use this pounder here, and I'm just going to crush them up. After you get done crushing them up, we're just going to open one end, which I'm actually kind of surprised that it didn't bust open when I was crushing them. Okay, I'm going to bring my bowl over here. And I'm going to dump this whole sleeve into this butter. So I'm just going to kind of toss this in that butter until everything gets coated. So in a large mixing bowl, I'm just going to go ahead and add in this squash, garlic, and onion mixture. And my squash did get a little bit of color on it, and I am not mad about it. Alright. And then to this, with this butter crumb mixture, or butter cracker mixture, you're going to add in about half of that. And we're going to reserve the other half for the top. I'm going to take half a cup of heavy whipping cream, about 1 cup of just cheddar cheese, and then 2 eggs that I lightly beaten. I'm just going to give that a stir. And I did drain my squash a little bit. There was quite a bit of liquid in the bottom, so I went ahead and drained that before I put it in here. And then it also says that you can add in some salt and pepper. So I'm going to add in some pepper. I don't think I'm going to add any salt, but I am going to add quite a bit of pepper. Alright, and then after you get it all mixed up, you're going to take your baking dish here, and I am going to go ahead and spray it with some non-stick cooking spray, just a little bit. We're going to take our mixture and just pour it in. Kind of spread it out. Gonna go ahead and add in a little bit more cheese on top. And then the bread or the crackers on top of that. Alright, and that's it. So now we're just going to put this in the oven uncovered for about 20 to 25 minutes. And again, it's on 375 degrees. Y'all, I forgot to mention that you're also going to want to add on some grated Parmesan cheese on top when you put the crackers on top. And there is our squash casserole, and I just put this on the side of some homemade fried chicken. Alright y'all, so tonight we are going to be making some homemade fried squash, and I have my nieces and my nephew here to help me out. Alright, so we are starting out by turning our stove on to a medium heat. I have some oil here in this cast iron skillet, and while that heats up, we're going to slice up the squash. So I'm just going to cut the ends off of this squash. And I have my family here, so we're going to be using about 4 large squash. But of course, you just do the amount that's best for your family. And I'm going to cut these pretty thin, just because we like the way that tastes better, just a thinner piece. But again, you just cut it to your liking. Alright, so now we're going to get our dredging station all ready. I'm going to put some all-purpose flour in one thing. And then my niece Jalen and my nephew Brody, they just went out and got our farm fresh eggs. So we're going to use these tonight. Oops, making a mess. And I'm just going to season this with a little bit of black pepper. I'm not going to put salt in the flour because once they come out of the grease, I'll lightly salt them on the top, so I don't want it to get too salty. Okay, and then what you'll do is you'll just take one of your little slices of squash. I like to put mine in the flour first. Dip it over in the egg. Make sure it gets well coated. And then put it back in the flour. I do mine just like I do my fried chicken. Alright, and then I'm just going to set it to the side, and we're going to repeat that process until all of the squash has been covered. Alright, now Jalen is going to test our grease and see if it's hot. And the way we do it is we just take a little bit of flour, and then you just kind of sprinkle it in. And if it sizzles, it's ready to go. And as you can see, it's sizzling. And so now Kaylin, she's going to take our squash, and I have some tongs right over there, Kay. And she's just going to put them in just like that. And we're going to let it sit there and cook for maybe just a couple minutes on each side, and then we'll be ready to go. My family is so silly. Okay, y'all, taste test them and let us know what you think. Go ahead. Good? I want to thank y'all so much for hanging out with me in the kitchen today. I hope you enjoyed seeing a little bit of my family helping me with that last recipe. We had a lot of fun that night, just kind of cooking together and hanging out. But if you enjoyed today's video, please give it a big thumbs up. Leave me a comment down below if you have any other squash side dishes that you would like to share with everybody. And I will see y'all in the next video. Bye!